What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Facts on the Ground. I'm Jesse Zerwell, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Misty Winston. And today we are pleased to welcome back to the show Robbie Jaeger. He's a investigative political finance reporter. He's the lead political finance reporter at MCSC Network, and he recently launched his own Substack slash independent media outlet called PolitiFi. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and probably some related things as well. So Robbie, thank you for joining us again.
Well, appreciate you guys having me back on. It's been a little bit, but I feel like things have been crazy busy, especially like with you guys. You guys are blowing up, doing all sorts of crazy interviews and stuff. So I mean, yeah, it's great. Yeah, things have definitely been busy on my end too. Like, whenever you first get into this stuff, like it's just like a hobby, right? And then the more you start taking it seriously, and then you get real serious about it, and then it's like,
all
it just almost
consuming.
it consumes you, right? So
Yeah.
just trying to find that balance actually, has
It's
been kind
hard.
of difficult. But yeah, I think I'm starting to figure out, what I want to do with the direction I want to go with all of it. So I mean, yeah, once you kind of find that direction, everything else kind of, starts falling into place. So that's nice, at least having that direction to go in.
Yeah, and I'm really excited that you started the Substack, and I definitely want to dig into that a little bit. But I mean, what you've been here mostly to talk about is the colonial spill. So I figure since we have you here, we could go ahead and get an update, see where that's at right now. I know that they have been trying to delay and all kinds of stuff. So fill us in. Where are we at with the Colonial Pipeline leak?
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't remember the last time or the last update I gave your show. So
We were talking about the hack or
It
right.
was right after the
It
hack.
was right after the hack, and we were still awaiting those preliminary or those new updated estimates, right? So
Mhm.
this was okay. So this was back in May, then
Mhm.
early May, because they were okay. All right, so at least now I know where to start from.
Mhm.
All right, so for those, obviously, quick overview: August of last year, at Huntersville, North Carolina, Colonial Pipeline leaked for an undetermined amount of time, maybe weeks, maybe months. At first, like I said, they've had to revise the estimates of it. The latest estimates for this spill was 1.2 million gallons of gasoline, which would make it, like, I think, top two all-time pipeline spills. Definitely the greatest of this last 20 years. Um, well, they know, and they've admitted that 1.2 million gallon estimate was far too low, or it's going to be far too low in the end. So initially, state regulators had given them a May 28th deadline of giving them new estimates as far as the volume of the spill. Colonial Pipeline actually came back and said um, that in order for them to accurately predict, or not even, they didn't even use the word accurately, in order for them to predict or give a new volume estimate, they would essentially have to shut down their entire operation as far as cleanup efforts are concerned. So they'd have to shut down the entire cleanup effort for possibly weeks to get an estimate in which they said, and the engineers they hired to kind of back them up on it also said that even if they did do that and used a new method to estimate how much gas was actually spilled, that the estimation totals given by the technology and by those models that they use would be open to interpretation and may not even be accurate, essentially. And so that's kind of a disheartening thing, and they've requested basically an indefinite suspension or an indefinite extension of this deadline for estimates, as from regulators. And that's about where we are now. Since they filed their little plea to state regulators that said, hey, we don't think it's wise for us to stop cleanup operations for us to give you an estimation total, right? So we're not going to do that. And even if we did, they probably wouldn't even be accurate anyway. Um, and then, they've state regulators, to my knowledge, have not responded to that. Or if they have, it's been a private response. Uh, you know, I guess the latest update that there is that Colonial Pipeline has to file monthly evaluations. They basically give updated totals on how much gas they've dug up out of the soil. And at last count, we're getting really close to that 1.2 million mark. So we're almost at, like, I think we're just broke 1.1 million gallons of gas, and the cleanup effort's not going to stop anytime soon. This is something that, unfortunately, is going to drag on and on and on, possibly for years. If we ever get we may not even get new volume estimates. We'll probably only have to know, or we'll probably only really find out how big the spill was years from now, whenever regulators finally say, okay, enough is enough with the reporting, and then we can finally look at the totals of how much they've recovered at that point. But, it's still a long way from over, on multiple fronts. Like, there's that's the depressing part, is that, especially for the people in the area in Huntersville, they may never know how much gas really spilled. And even if they do get any answers, it's nowhere close. So we're almost a year on. This was August of 2020. Here we are, late June. We're 10 months in, and virtually no resolution to this situation whatsoever. But, there are still investigations by state and federal regulators that are pending. So if there is any silver lining to the people that are affected by this, is that, even though it'll probably all wind up being a slap on the wrist, there could still be the possibility of some historic fines coming down the pipeline, no pun intended, for Colonial in the foreseeable future. But then again, the Department of Justice just recently, and I mean recently as in the last week, awarded a judgment against Citgo for a spill that they had in 2006. So if that's any indication on the pace that the DOJ is going to move on, it could be a very long while before this has any kind of real resolution. So it's kind of messed up, honestly.
It is. Like, it's weird that this is just something that's we're probably never going to know the truth, and that's really disturbing. That these gas, like, these pipeline companies can just, now we know that they can just spill 1.2 million gallons of whatever it is and get away with it. There will be maybe some fines, maybe not. Might take years to even get those assessed and doled out, and that's really kind of disturbing. That's the level of control that they have over their industry.
Yeah, I mean, and I did leave out. I did almost, I forgot. I don't see how I forgot, but like just a couple of weeks ago, Colonial Pipeline did in fact have to, I guess, turn in their annual inspection reports to federal regulators, and they inspected right around 42% of the entire 5,500 mile system. They actually checked over 1,000 miles of it for cracks, which is an improvement over the very low total that they did in 2019. I believe it was like 11% of it, so like 600. I think it was like 650
Yeah, it was like
miles.
600. Yeah.
Yeah, so they checked 650 miles for cracks in 2019. The lowest totals for 2020 is that they checked over 1,000 miles, just over 1,000 miles for cracks. 42% of the pipeline overall was checked by any sort of inspection method. They had an insane amount of things they had to fix. It was like something. It's like 530 anomalies that they detected in their system, and this is just all okay. To federal. I mean, honestly, it is. Regulators don't care. It's like, hey, this is fine. This is totally normal behavior, and it's look, the pipeline system and the way our government, both regulates it and treats it whenever it's doing bad things, which it often does. It's almost as much as part of the problem as the pipeline companies themselves, because they just let them get away with it. Me and Jesse have spoken several times about how Biden's administration backing the Penn East pipeline project, and is it the same project that they were backing in the Supreme Court case, where they were basically upholding Trump's DOJ's assertion that it's okay to use eminent domain to build these pipeline. They just did it again with Line 3. Basically came out and said, no, we're not going to pull no permits. Everything's, or the DOJ basically just came out and said, no, everything's cool with Enbridge's Line 3. Biden could still technically pull the permit, but he's not going to, unless, he's almost definitely not going to. So I mean, yeah, the people were saying, "Oh, you got to vote out fascism. You have to vote out, climate denialism. You have to vote out, all of this." And then what we said the entire time is that Joe Biden, in particular, he spent the entire debate season trying to assuage the fears of scared Republicans, of anti-Trump Republicans, basically saying, "Hey, relax. We're not going to ban fracking. It's all going to be okay. The
Yeah.
oil industry is going to go fine." And then that's one promise that he did live up to, because he's, backing on. And look, people can point to Keystone XL all they want. Keystone was pretty much dead already. And the Keystone Pipeline itself is still functional. The XL was just an offshoot project of the Keystone that hadn't even been completed yet. So killing it was just an easy PR move. Well, when it comes down to the not so easy stuff, with the actual pipelines that are running, like DAPL, which he backed, and again, Line 3, which he's backing, Line 5, he'll probably wind up backing that too. Biden is doing exactly what he said. He's not going to change anything fundamentally in the pipeline industry, the oil industry. They're just going to continue business as usual, and so far that's the way it's been.
Yeah, and not to get off topic, but last week we saw him come out and say that to resolve the apparent uptick in homicides in the U.S., he or his administration is going to grant more money to police forces around the country. And it's going to come from $350 billion in stimulus money that's been doled out to states and
for COVID relief.
Yeah, but it's going to the police, and mental health services, for example, are not going to be attended to. So it's almost Reaganite in a way. And
oh yeah,
we've just been living like a repeat of Reagan since Reagan, really.
He's got his first. He's got his first strike in on Syria, so who knows what's to come.
Yeah. No doubt about it. But yeah, I just don't see, none of these regulations are going to get, as long as we allow these oil and gas companies to basically write their own rules and investigate themselves when they do fuck up, that works really well with the cops. I'm sure if we do it with oil and gas companies, that'll be fine too. I don't really foresee any of this changing. I have seen like it seems like an uptick in some of the activism surrounding this. Like the Line 3 protests have been, pretty good, decent turnouts and stuff like that. But yeah, I just don't see how Biden is no better than Trump. And the whole COVID, like the thing that Jesse just brought up, the COVID relief going to give more money to cops. The other day when everybody got really mad at me because I said that Joe Biden if you voted for Joe Biden, you voted for fascism and white supremacy, be mad. That's the truth.
Oh, it wasn't everybody. It was a few people. It wasn't everybody that got mad.
No, it's really just the trolls. It's and it doesn't matter what I tweet, they're mad. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of the argument against what I was saying was, oh, well, he's better than Trump. And one of the things that they kept saying is COVID relief or the COVID response. And I'm like, please tell me how he's been better. Somebody explain it to me. He's not been better. He's withholding vaccines from third world countries. He's, just all kinds of stuff. I mean, he's allocating money that's supposed to go to COVID relief to cops. How is that beneficial to anybody? And forget the fact that he's not dealing with the actual causes of crime or the uptick in murder. The uptick in murder is because people have no money, no jobs, no hope. Where they've been locked down, they're tired, they're exhausted, they can't eat, they can't take their kids to the doctor, and people get frustrated, and then bad things happen. I mean, that's just. It seems very basic, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, putting more violence workers on the street is not going to solve the violence problem.
No, definitely not.
I mean, because honestly, he's kind of the architect of the modern way, the modern problem that we have with incarceration, and the way that we were just filling our prisons up. You say Reaganite, I mean. That was your guy. Biden was just coming in, and he was a hot shot back during the Reagan era, and it just continued on from there. I mean, he's been around. Look, and this is the thing. Like, this is the one thing that, not the one thing, but one of the biggest things that people really couldn't stand about Clinton was that, she's a political lifer. And to an extent, when you compared her to Sanders, I mean, they had both been politicians for the better part of 40 years, just about between both of them during that time. But everybody always looked at Hillary Clinton as a climber, right? You started, first lady to senator to secretary of state. Then of course attempted
two times,
climbing up the backs of others.
And it is kind of, it looked opportunistic to a lot of the voters out there, where it was like, okay, compared to old man Bernie, who's just sitting there, by comparison. Now, further examination, Bernie isn't quite just old man Bernie, right?
No.
But that's something I thought would really work against Biden in this election, because it was, I always felt like Biden could have won in 2016 had he just run. I feel like Obama was popular enough, and Biden could have just rode right off the backs of Obama on his coattails, just like he did for 8 years. Finally got him to the White House by proxy, and it would have been smooth sailing from there. But he decided not to run. Trump happened.
I don't think he decided not to run. I think Hillary Clinton said it's my turn.
But that's that's actually a slightly more viable reason.
She essentially got to the point. She essentially got to the point where she was running because she felt that entitled. She deserved to be president.
I think feels that way.
Yeah, well, she was given Secretary of State, I think, as like a consolation prize. Like, okay, I just kicked your ass. You can be Secretary of State, and then after my 8 years are up, we'll bring you back on. And if you notice, when that happened, why am I blanking on his name? I'm blanking on his name, but the former DNC chair quit so that Debbie Wasserman Schultz could insert herself, and then they rigged the election rigged the primary for Hillary Clinton. So I think this is all like inner working. She was promised Secretary of State, and then after 8 years, it's your turn. We'll push you. We'll help you. And so Joe Biden didn't really have an opportunity to run. It wasn't his turn. And then when Hillary fucked it up, I think honestly the only reason they ran Joe Biden is because he had enough name recognition where they could rig the primary against Bernie and it not look fishy.
Oh yeah, I mean, and look, that's the Democratic Party. They were the Republican Party. They may have massive primaries, as we saw in 2016, where there's like 20 some odd people running for president, and they're all on the debate stage at one time. We've come to see the Democratic Party as a more like exclusive type deal, and there's a reason for that. Is because their restrictions are they're strict. Right, you have to do this ABC all the way to X, Y, and Z in order to even get on the stage.
They're like the Scientologists of politics.
It's crazy, right? Whereas Republicans let each other just stand on stage and eat each other alive until there's only one person left getting applause. That's how they judge basically who's running for president. But the Democrats, it's kind of like this has been a plan. This has been determined years in advance. First, we're going to do Obama, then we're going to do Hillary. Biden wasn't part of the plan. I think Kamala was maybe in runnings to be part of the plan,
but she couldn't do it.
No, well, she's not ready, and she's doing an abysmal job.
Yeah, she's not like nobody likes her. She couldn't even she had to drop out before her home state, like before the first primary, because she was about to get her ass handed to her in California. And she knew it. She was like coming in 5th or something in your home state.
Yeah, you can't get embarrassed like that.
No, you can't, because that'll ruin it for like the next time you run. That'll be all your opponent talks about.
She's going to need California in a couple of years.
Yes.
Because I mean, do we really believe Biden's going to run again?
No.
He might.
I doubt it.
He might, but I mean,
maybe you're right. He might. I can't imagine it happening, especially given the fact that he's currently struggling to even like form coherent sentences and not be like super freaking creepy all the time. Like the other day when he was doing the whisper thing, which still gives me the creeps, dude. I don't know.
And people are just like making him into ASMR videos and shit. And it's like, but like real talk though. I mean, that's going to be the Republican strategy going forward. It's obviously going to be hyper focusing on a couple of different things, which, I mean, politically speaking, this is why Democrats have to have a January 6th commission, why they have to have publicity on the probe into the Trump organization. And this is exactly why Twitter, when you wake up every day, Donald Trump or his family are still trending in top 10 every single day almost, because Democratic operatives and politicians have to keep Trump somehow in the news. By the way, news organizations are more than happy to allow them to do so because Trump equals ratings to them, and without Trump, they are, as you all know, sinking into the toilet. But the strategy is going to
Good
be,
riddance.
but they have to, because if they don't focus on, if they don't have a January 6th commission for CNN to cover 24 hours a day, and stuff like that, then you actually have to start talking about the government.
Policy.
You
Yeah.
have to start saying, well, what has Biden done, except for lie, over and over again? If you holding him up against his campaign promises, it's abysmal already, from the $2,000 checks. Look, the whole kids in cages thing has aged like milk over the last 4 years. Democrats have done absolutely nothing with that. His administration has been terrible. Again, he has no record on climate that he can point to yet. It's just been one disaster after another, but you haven't seen any coverage of that because we're still talking about so-called insurrections from January 6th. But eventually that's going to have to go away. And when presidential election season really starts ramping up, I mean, we've seen reports that Mike Pompeo is already meeting with big money donors.
Oh my God.
Behind closed doors in New York. He's going to position himself. Whether or not the party itself actually gets behind him, that's neither here. Well, I mean, that's debatable. But that really depends on if Tim Scott is ready, which he may not be as of yet. But Mike Pompeo is going to hop in front of the cameras and just announce himself to be the front runner from day one. He's going to basically take the page out of Trump's book and say, hey, I'm the guy. I'm the former CIA director. I'm the former Secretary of State. I'm the one most qualified. I don't take no shit. That's the way he's going to position himself. He's going to hammer Biden on, his mental capacities. I mean, the Republican primary is going to be interesting, but I think you really got to watch out.
I think DeSantis is going to run.
I'm pretty definitely sure going to run.
He's going to run.
Yeah, for sure. And I think
he's a rock star right now in Florida. He is a rock star. He is a fucking rock star. They love him.
And I wish Bob Menendez would run. So
as a Republican, you have to have Florida.
You do have to have Florida, and he's got Florida. I mean, Florida. I saw like a rally thing that he was at, and it was literally like the Beatles were on stage. I mean, he was talking about how that he refused to shut Florida down and they were eating it up. They love him there. So I mean, people need to watch out for him too. But yeah, they're going to use Trump as like a weird threat or totem or something against people. Mike Pompeo freaks me the fuck out though. He's so evil. It's not even funny. Oh, they all do, really.
He's always got that weird sweaty smirk on his face, but the gears are churning inside.
Always.
About
the next evil thing he can do.
Yeah, which one of the next sanctions he's gonna put into action.
He's for sure the
most
dangerous.
Which brown kids can I kill next?
I mean, Mike Pompeo is. I mean, I'm not trying. This isn't really being said as a prop or anything to the guy, but as Jesse said, you always see the wheels turning, even when he's just got that blank expression on his face. I believe Mike Pompeo is actually supremely intelligent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about the neocons is that Paul Wolfowitz, for example, Douglas Feith, they all came out of the University of Chicago and studied under Leo Strauss. And I don't know what you would call him exactly, political philosopher, maybe. And that formed the basis of what became their
ideology.
Their neoconservative ideology. And that led to Project for a New American Century, etc. But point being, a lot of these neocons went to very good schools and they are very well educated, but they use that in a Machiavellian way, to put it kindly. Mm-hmm. And Mike Pompeo, I think, is a prime example of that.
He's one of the worst. I really think he's one of the worst. And he's go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was just going to say that, like, thinking about the prospectus for what 2024 is going to be like, let's just assume Biden Harris is the ticket for the Democratic side. Let's go ahead and just assume I mean, because if we're not assuming that, we're assuming Biden's not running. Obviously, Kamala goes to the front of the ticket, and now you have just batshit crazy frenzy on the left, or the left. Okay, the
Right.
Democrat side about who's going to fill the VP spot. So let's just
Boy wonder
assume
spook.
Biden, Harris, and then against either. I mean, it could be Ron DeSantis, as you said. That's an extremely viable option just because his ability to possibly carry Florida. Is he going to carry nationwide votes? Who knows? Again, a Mike Pompeo, possibly a Tim Scott. I think Tim Scott's the future. The future. Again, I'm using a lot of air quotes here. I think that's who they want to position as the future of the party. I don't know if he's so-called ready yet, but he's definitely exploring options. Again, Nikki Haley, we've heard that name tossed around as well. Could you imagine a Pompeo Haley ticket? It doesn't
Oh my
sound great to
God.
us, but if you're trying to be competitive, and you have to. I mean, the parties are looking at stuff like this. It's not
Oh,
always
for
about
sure.
policy, it's about optics. Democrats win elections off of optics all the time because whatever policies they propose, half of them don't work and the other half they don't enact them or they can't
Or
enact
they
them.
enact them like poorly so that they won't work.
Right. Exactly. So there's always a
Self-sabotage.
problem. Well, they have to have a problem to fix, right? If they
Yeah.
just went out there and fixed the problem, then you could always just say, hey, you elected us and now things are great. But instead it's, hey, you elected us, but they won't let us fix the problem, which as we can see is
And now you have
total
to vote
bullshit.
for us again so that we can fight for the problem. And they just keep doing that. Like somebody tweeted about that the other day. I can't believe we don't have Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. And I was like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll be able to talk about it next election and the election after that and the election after that and the election. Because, people always say that progressives, shifted the conversation. The conversation doesn't save anybody. The conversation does
Right.
nothing for anybody. And so I don't want to have to keep talking about Medicare for all in 2022 and 2024 and 2026. I just really don't. And that's what they want to do. They don't ever want to solve the problem because then they can't run on it. And that's, where we're at.
Yeah,
That's politics.
And especially on the Democratic side, you look at even the people who are running for Congress, you look at their platforms on their websites, and across the board, at least when it comes to the more progressive ones, it's climate justice, economic justice, justice, Medicare for all. And then you look under that and what they mean by Medicare for all, and it's not Medicare for all at all. It's basically
access.
what we've been hearing. Yeah,
Expanding.
access and incrementalism.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're good at buzzwords. I will give them that. Progressives are very good at buzzwords and emotional manipulation. They are very
great
good
at running. They're great at campaigning.
Yeah.
Because they're fantastic at telling you exactly what they know that you want to hear. They're going to tell you what they know wins votes. We're going to get you help. We're going to get you Medicare for all. We're going to cancel student debt. We're going to get climate justice. We're going to do and when it comes down to do a lot of it, they're either just not going to have numbers and they know that going in, or they're going to vote present like AOC did on the Capitol Police funding bill when
Didn't Rashida Tlaib too?
Yeah, when their votes would have essentially killed it.
And Jamal Bowman too, I think.
So and that's the example that people are going to use stuff like that time and time again, is that whenever your vote matters right now, you can actually use that power that you said you've worked so hard to attain and that pressure that you've gotten, but you won't use it. And you notice that it's also funny now how Democrats spent 4 years saying, well, we have to defeat Trump. We have to defeat Trump. Trump was defeated. And now you don't have anybody to blame. So you cannot run a presidential campaign against Joe Manchin. So there's going to have to be a crossroads here because you can only blame one dude. Manchin and Cinema. I mean, you're seeing pieces written, even progressive media. They won't just, they want to have the boogeyman.
A boogeyman. Yeah.
And look, I'll admit, Joe Manchin is a very powerful dude.
Mm-hmm.
And lobbyists around the country know this. They understand, a lot of times it's, hey, let's try to get influence into the executive branch. Let's get to the president's ear. You're going to see, oh, Biden's coming into office. Let's go out and find a bunch of lobbyists that used to work for Biden back in his old Senate days, or maybe that worked in his office whenever he was in the White House. But I've seen a trend over the last couple of months is that a lot of lobbying companies, especially in the oil and gas industry, are going out and trying to find people that used to work with Joe Manchin instead, because he's got so much power right now for some odd reason. And it's not lost on people, but eventually, again, Manchin is, a problem, but you also have to just understand that if it wasn't Manchin, it would be someone else.
Yeah, okay. So this is how it works. The Democratic Party doesn't want to get anything done, so they say, "Hey, Joe Manchin, you be the heel, you be the guy the fall guy, you be the one who's like not going to go along with everything, and then it won't pass." And he's serving his role. That's all he's doing. He's just been the chosen guy to be the thorn in their side, and that is preventing everything from happening. And it's really just like a team effort. They're all in it. It's the same reason why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, and Jamal Bowman all voted present on a bill that they knew if they just spoke up and said no, they could have an influence. And they know that. But it's all down to numbers. And so they figure out how many votes they need and how many votes that they need, to make sure something doesn't pass. And then they go and they tell people, Nancy Pelosi goes around and hands out the vote assignments. You're going to vote yes, you're going to vote yes, you're going to vote no. And, I think they're given their like key issues that they're allowed to be kind of brave on and like speak outside the box a little bit. And then that's it. Like, you have your issue. This is the thing that you can speak out about, and that's it. The rest of the time you need to do your role and stay in line. And it's, that's how it's always been.
I mean, one last thing though, and the thing about, but it's Manchin specifically, I think, for one particular reason, and that's he could switch parties tomorrow and still win his election in his state. He could run as a Republican in West Virginia and not have to change a single thing about him except his party affiliation on his campaign registration, and he would still win probably by the same margin, maybe even a higher margin than he did previously. Look, that's just how he is, and lots of Democrats are like that. A lot of Senate Democrats, most of them are exactly like him. He's just the one that doesn't care about, like, he knows he's good, right? If he were to go Republican tomorrow, people like to say, well, that'd be closer to his beliefs. Like, no, actually, a West Virginia Democrat, that's exactly what the Democratic Party is to me. It's a bunch of Dixiecrats, because that's how they presented policy. That's how they govern. There are no really progressive senators. I know, look, people at this point are still worshiping at the altar of Bernie. And they can say, well, he's technically not a Democrat. He is, for all intents and purposes, a Democrat.
The altar is smoldering.
But he's fought for 50 years.
He hasn't.
He's campaigned off of ideas for 50 years. Ideas that sound great.
Never
and ideas. But it's not enough to just do that. And you can't say that he's really changed much. I think he has changed the conversation, and that's about as much as we can say about Bernie Sanders. He hasn't actually changed any
conversation, but then he starts walking his own shit back. Like, he doesn't talk about Medicare for all anymore. He talks about access to healthcare or expanding Medicare. He doesn't. So he led everybody on this path and now is walking it back. He's like, instead of moving the Democrats to the left, he's moving the left to the right, and it's a problem.
Yes. And I feel like, again, when I say the conversation, I really say that, as a means to say that, he became a pop culture figure icon, right? And with that, the stuff that he was talking about, obviously exploded onto the mainstream when those ideas weren't really being discussed or taken seriously. You can argue that they weren't really taken seriously even after he brought them up, but at least the conversations were being had. You were starting to see CNN having panels discussing Medicare for all versus, all this other stuff, which was, but you're 100% right. When it came down, both times, might I add, both with Hillary and Biden, when it came down to it, instead of taking your large, and he did build a movement of sort, right? He was cult of personality. You're going to get a lot of followers, and that he did. But instead of leveraging that power, he basically looked at the millions of people who followed him into the battle because he billed himself as this anti-establishment, anti-democratic party. Like, I'm the outsider. I'm not really a Democrat. I'm just running as one, whatever. I'm the outsider guy. He was basically painting himself as a Trump-esque figure, whether people really want to really go that. I know that might get me some heat in certain circles, but I mean, to me, it was both take advantage of this outsider persona, but then he turned around and took the millions of followers and said, we still have to follow Hillary Clinton into this battle now. I know that I've been telling you she's a corporate war hawk for months on end. I know I've been telling, and now I'm just saying, you know what? It's okay. And
she's a good friend of mine.
Yeah. And
he never, I will give him credit. He never said that about Hillary Clinton. I don't think that she was a good friend of his. But and the 2020 run was so very obviously a setup. He never had any intention of winning. No. The moment he announced, he was like, Joe Biden's a good friend of mine. He can beat Trump. I mean, what the hell are you doing? It was so
had that
trying to win.
No. He had that huge rally in Brooklyn in, was it January 2019 or 2020? But the crowd was huge. And I remember, I think it was this dude on Twitter who has a lot of followers, Amini MD, something like that. And he tweeted a picture of it and then tweeted something above it like, this is what revolution looks like.
No, it isn't.
Even then, at that early stage, I
know
put my head in my hand.
Well, look, he had the bird moment.
The bird.
He had the bird moment, and for all intents and purposes, like, that was one of those moments that was like, if that probably captured a lot of people, you know what I'm saying? But it was like one of those, like, this is some destiny shit right here. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's sitting there talking, the bird lands on the podium, he just kind of stops, I mean, that was a great, genuine moment that, but if he didn't win that year, it just wasn't going to happen, right?
No.
And look, here's the thing. This is how and it works for AOC and them people too. The Democratic Party, even though Bernie Sanders did them a hell of a solid by endorsing Joe Biden and doing his damnedest to sheepdog all of the people that he told and his surrogates told to hate Joe Biden and, the Democratic establishment. He said, no, we need you. You need to, vote for Biden. It's all okay. He's a good friend of mine, even though he's fucked our country for years.
He's a war criminal.
Right. And when he did that, you're right. It was like, there was no fight in the dog at all. And it was kind of like,
but I
mean, you had all this momentum, and what did it do? What did it get you?
Nothing.
The party still hated you.
We're worse off now than ever.
They knew that you were going to run. I mean, they knew that Sanders was going to run after 2016. They were like, okay, well, he was one of only 2 people in the race. He's definitely going to run in 2020. And they still ran like 14 people against you anyway, because they hate you. Just like the Democrats at the DCCC were freaking out because AOC's campaign had donated money to their account, and they didn't want to get attacked by Republicans on radio ads for taking money from socialists, as if AOC is a fucking socialist in any shape, form, or fashion. For number one,
she took grassroots donations and gave them to CIA candidates.
Yes, she did.
I don't know how you could ever call her a socialist.
Look,
ever.
That is, and unfortunately, if there is something to criticize AOC about in this situation, it's definitely that, for spending all that money. But unfortunately, that's common practice.
Yeah.
With campaigns, especially the big raisers, they're going to funnel a lot of money down to maybe the less successful candidates, and some of the more well-known. It's just an incestuous relationship. But yeah, it just lets you know that, hey, why are you giving away all of this money to people that obviously hate you? Why are you trying to get all of these votes pulled together for people that obviously hate you. It just it's never made any sense. Like,
why are you voting for people who hate you? Why are you voting for Nancy Pelosi, who took away your committee assignments? Like you said, that one of the big things that you needed to do that was more important than forcing the vote was that we need to get progressives in committee assignments. Okay, well, not only did you not force the vote and withhold your vote for Nancy Pelosi, who you should have never been considering voting for in the first place, but then she took away your committee assignment after you said that, which just humiliates you and makes you look like a schmuck.
And then that, and the fact that was like, okay, so we're gonna vote. Okay, yeah, that's cool. We can do Tony Blinken. We can do Avril Haines. Excuse me. The CIA deputy director back in the day that covered up the torture program and all that. We can vote to confirm her. I mean, these are all things that Bernie Sanders did. But we're gonna draw the line at Neera Tanden. Right, which absolutely he wasn't gonna. He might have, but he never had to because she was withdrawn and progressives cheered. Like, yeah, we got a bunch of fucking corporate war criminals in the cabinet, but Neera Tanden didn't get in. And I'm not saying that Neera Tanden's great, because she's not. But if you held Neera Tanden up against like Anthony Blinken, I mean, quite honestly, Blinken is the bigger problem. Haynes is the bigger problem. Like Neera Tanden, she's a lackey for Hillary Clinton and John Podesta. Sure, she talks a lot of really.
She's an attack dog,
shit.
Really.
Yes, she runs Center for American Progress. That's her biggest sin. She's terrible. She's a terrible on all fronts. Yeah, but like she's not a war criminal.
Not
even
yet.
Though she aspired to be. She aspires to be, as we know from WikiLeaks.
We believe in you.
And she backs war criminals 100%. But Tony Blinken and Avril Haines and all those deep state fucks that Biden put into his cabinet that, everybody pretty much lockstep voted for it to confirm. After that, but progressives were cheering about Neera Tanden not being made as the director of OMB. And then what happened? A couple months later, Biden fills her position, or basically creates her a position as some kind of liaison between his administration and the budget committee, which Bernie Sanders chairs. So now, anytime
but that
Bernie
sure
Sanders
did distract progressives for a couple weeks.
But now, anytime Bernie Sanders has to communicate with the Biden administration, it's possible he has to go knock on Neera Tanden's door first. So it's the ultimate.
Mr. Chairman of the Budget Committee, what the fuck has he done with that? Nothing. He's not done jack shit with that position at all.
I'm pretty sure he's quoted as saying that we'll be working within the framework of what the Biden administration wants. Yes. So
that's your king. That's your guy. I mean, it's just so frustrating.
When you operate that way, you're not going to get any results.
Yeah, that's why I just don't think the electoral system's ever going to give us the change that we need, because nobody's ever going to reach a position to be able to achieve anything within the current framework. Like, they're just never going to allow it. Like, we just talked to Shahid Buttar recently. We have this argument with him every time. And I think he's a genuine person. I really do. Like, I like him very much. I agree with him on almost everything. I think he's fascinating. I love listening to him. He's like a real activist. He's really like in it. He's like on the ground kind of guy. And I respect that. But I just, if you are that guy, they're either A, never going to let you get elected, or B, if you happen to get elected, they will either force you into changing or they will push you out. Period. End of story. You have no chance of making any difference whatsoever. And he's like, well, we just need to elect the right people. Well, I mean, we don't have time for that, fam. We just do not. Like, we thought we were electing the right people. Who are the right people? Exactly.
Right. And that's another thing, is that who are the right people?
Right. Yeah, no, but I mean, it's the same thing that we face with the squad. And I just don't know how many times we have to keep going through this same thing over and over again. And, oh, well, Nina Turner will fix it or whatever, which actually gives us a great segue into, I don't want to keep you for too much longer. So I want to talk about the Substack. Sure. So one of the things that you talked about, I don't want to give away the whole Substack. But one of the things that you talk about in there is the Nina Brown. Geez Louise, the Nina Turner, Chantel Brown race, which is very near to me. It's in Ohio, a couple hours north. What we saw Hillary Clinton endorse Nina Turner's opponent, which, I mean, if you want to put on your tinfoil hat, and I mean, it wouldn't shock me if that was an intentional thing. Hillary Clinton knows that she's poison. So it makes no sense whatsoever for her to do something like that, unless she's trying to help Nina Turner. And people need to remember that Nina Turner used to be a Hillary Clinton surrogate. She used to work for Correct the Record. And she, in fact, was on the board. So nobody should be trusting Nina Turner. It's really weird to me that people are like so gaga. Like, how many times do you guys have to get screwed over before you start being skeptical?
Well,
I tweeted something out about that today.
Yeah.
So here's two things. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and okay. So, all right. Look, first of all, Hillary Clinton is many, many, many things. Self-aware, I don't think is one of them. So I don't know if the whole "I know I'm toxic." I mean, I just don't know about that, because I'm pretty sure she thinks very highly of herself. I'm pretty sure, as a matter of fact, she's redecorated her bedroom like the Oval Office at this point. And just kind of sits in there all day in her delusions. But I think the thing about
hey, she got shot at in Bosnia. So.
There's two things about Nina Turner.
Respect her trauma, Robbie.
Got PTSD.
I think that, obviously the association with Bernie Sanders is huge for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and being basically his number one surrogate for about 5 years now. So obviously, I mean, Nina Turner was the person that a lot of people wanted to see run or be his vice president, should he had made it to the ticket. So you have that reputation running for you, right? And then, of course,
the one thing I wanted to say about Nina Turner that I read in your piece is that after Hillary's endorsement of her opponent, they came out. Nina Turner's campaign came out and essentially bragged that they raised $100,000 in record time, as if that is now the end goal of electoral politics.
Yeah, well, I mean, at this stage of the game, I feel like
it is,
and I mean, that's what I do. Right. A lot of my reporting is. I mean, and I think that maybe, look, if I were to raise $100,000 and I'm a politician, I'm definitely going to advertise that, especially if I did it in like just a matter of minutes. And the reason why, especially, is because you tried to humiliate me, and this is just me coming from like a political strategist point of view. The other campaign tried to humiliate me by pulling out like a big gun, right? You pulled the big gun out. You pulled out HRC's endorsement.
It backfired.
Which is essentially the party establishment's endorsement. And just as a show of how much people fucking hate Hillary Clinton, instead of it boosting your fundraising, it boosted mine, because people fucking hate Hillary, and just seeing her name pop up. Yeah, I totally see why Nina Turner raised so much money so fast, because you just basically gave her, her PR team and her campaign staff a great email headline. You gave her the best one. And that's exactly what they did.
I'm just talking about in the context of what you mentioned earlier about how she has this cult of personality behind her, these people still fawning over her. And like we just said, she's playing what the end game has come to. She's no different. She's not progressive. She's a neoliberal.
Yeah. I think that's it's no different than her ignoring Assange. I mean, we went after her for weeks to come to our event. It's not far for her. She's in the state of Ohio. It would have been, an hour and a half, a couple hour drive maybe for her to get to our Assange event, and she just ignores it. It's that she is like none of these people are like revolutionary in any way. They're not going to challenge the status quo in any way. They like to pretend that's what they're doing. They use the rhetoric of that. But not one of them has ever done anything to contribute to that effort.
So here's the thing. I think Nina Turner, she's under a huge microscope right now. I think for numerous reasons. I mean, and the one thing is that she's, to my knowledge, she's ran before, but she didn't win, right? So she hasn't been technically a politician.
She was a state senator.
She's been on a state level, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people they hold that as a kind of like a scapegoat for Nina Turner and be like, okay, well, she hasn't been in federal office yet, so she hasn't had a chance to fuck anything up yet. I hope she realizes that as well, because she's kind of like that last beacon of hope of any kind of semblance of maintaining any kind of trust in the progressive brand, in the Sanders brand. Because, I mean, obviously there's Sanders, Nina Turner's right there, and then you've got all the squad they all leech off that same pyramid of personality, right? you're either a HRC Democrat or you're a Sanders guy or a Sanders woman, and that's the way that they've been billing themselves. But Sanders' wing has been either co-opted or crushed, or it was all just AstroTurf from the beginning. And Nina Turner is the one that was like on the outside, so to speak, as far as like, I'm not a congresswoman, I'm not running for president, I'm just out here at rallies preaching. And now she's going to actually have to, play the politician role, which is obviously a natural for her because I mean, you've seen she's got that presence. You could see that she was thinking about running for something much earlier than she actually did. But she so far is, I mean, she's even using the $27 donation shtick that Bernie Sanders did. But she's absolutely crushing her opponent in fundraising, like on a 3-to-1 ratio. And I know it's still early, but that election is also a little bit earlier. I mean, it's a special election, so that's going to be coming up here rather, in the near future. And money doesn't necessarily win elections, and we haven't seen any super PACs really come out and do much yet. So getting the advertising out there. But yeah, Nina Turner is going to raise a lot of money for this campaign. She already is. We'll know more in July when her second quarter numbers come out. But yeah, it's gonna be big. It's gonna be big.
She's probably gonna win that seat. I mean, yeah, money doesn't necessarily win, but I think it's a pretty safe bet for her to win in that district, because she is playing it so safe and she is playing it so neoliberal. It's a very neoliberal district. I don't think that she's gonna have much trouble with it. And the problem with Nina that I have, one of the biggest problems I have is she already straight up told us, be prepared to be disappointed. I mean, in an interview, just be prepared. I'm going to disappoint you. And that's troubling. And the fact that she spent so much time defending the squad when she was on with Jordan Chariton, and Jordan wanted to give her all kinds of excuses. And I'm just done with those excuses. I really am. We do not have time. People are suffering. They're dying. The country is failing. We're headed for disaster on multiple different fronts, whether it's climate or economy or whatever. And then you have, people like Nina Turner playing it safe. And I just am not down with that. So I'm sick and tired of politicians trying to, play things safe.
And in the end, we're all anonymous to them. And I think a good case in point is if you go to Nina Turner's campaign page, the first thing you see on the landing page is in big typeface, "Hello, somebody," with an exclamation mark.
That's her shtick.
Hello, somebody.
It's a brand.
You're just somebody.
Hello, somebody. Like she likes to yell at about everything, like calling attention to something.
But there's an undercurrent there of rendering us anonymous. And
well, it's the whole, like, they also said they were going to fight for somebody they don't know. There ain't been no fight. Yeah. So I mean, she's probably going to win her seat, and then she's going to be the newest member of the tweet squad she's already been doing the tweet stuff. That's all we can expect from electoral politics. If you are really interested in like a snarky tweet and a dramatic speech, electoral politics is your thing. Go for it. It's fun. Good times. If you want like to watch a soap opera for psychopaths while the world's burning, there you go.
You want to watch a bunch of people spend a lot of fucking money on like TV commercials.
Yeah. On like a self-masturbatory narcissistic circus.
And they're not going to be spending their money. They're going to be spending your money. So you want to watch somebody spend hundreds of millions of dollars of other people's money on commercials about how great they are.
Commercials that everybody hates. Every time there's an election, regular people are like, they're terrible. They're negative. They're like just constant lies and bullshit and pandering and propaganda, and it's garbage. Our election, first of all, election cycles are way too long, fam. Way too long.
Tell me about it.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean,
that's what my newsletter's about.
Yeah.
If you like all of that shit, that's what I
and the newsletter's great. I love like the format that you have it in. So like your big story for this week, which the first week just dropped. So is it going to be weekly or monthly? I'm sorry, I forget.
I'm going to try to do this thing weekly. Okay. And I'm like realizing like, damn, I need more hours in the day.
Because you do it bi-weekly until you get going.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try to do it weekly. So yeah, last week's last week I published my findings on Sunrise Movement's latest tax returns from 2019, which I had reported on like a month or so ago, but I never actually had written anything about it. And I wanted to put it into context of the recent whistleblower that came from there. It had gotten fired, and it was he basically had said that big donors have been playing a part in their lack of agitational protests and stuff, like after they did the Wide Awake project, that they were told by big donors that they had to stop doing stuff like that and to stop protesting outside of politicians' homes. Well, that goes directly against Sunrise Movement's own website, where they say in actually the section of their tax returns, it says that we do not take money with strings attached. Well, if your big donors are telling you what you can and can't do, that sounds a lot like strings to me. So I kind of broke down. I broke down the letter and the claims made by the person that wrote it, and then I kind of connected in, my research into their latest donors, like being their largest donor being the George Soros's Open Society, a couple of kind of anonymous groups of donors like the Women Donors Network, and
the Wallace Fund,
the Wallace Global Fund, which is basically like. Let's just say it's basically like a hedge fund, a private hedge fund for like green energy type investments, right? And the whistleblower from Sunrise, his name was Alex O'Keefe. He mentioned that in one of the tweets, and I wasn't able to actually speak with him in person, so all of the quotes that I get in the article are from his publicly, either from the letter he published or from the Twitter threads that he published publicly. But he said, why do these millionaires and billionaires donate to us? Is it because of our spunk? I said, no. It's like, because there's literally trillions of dollars to be made from a green transition in a new green economy, and that's why they want a piece of it. Soros has numerous investments. He has some oil and gas investments as well, but he holds a huge stake in electric vehicle maker, or electric vehicle battery maker, QuantumScape. Women's Donors Network. We don't really know who donates to that. I wasn't able to find it. It got 3 million. They raised 9 million in 2019. 3 million of that came from the Chicago Community Trust. That's a huge organization with a ton of donors that, again, none of these nonprofits really disclose anything. And the list goes on and on. I kind of just break down those, and that's what I wanted PolitiFi to be. I mean, this week, if you haven't signed up, this week is probably even bigger because we've got the scoop on Turning Point USA.
Yeah.
We're going to be breaking down their taxes and all of the little the shady shit that Charlie Kirk has been getting into since the last time his foundation was really looked at. He's turned it into a $40 million disinformation machine. He's paying his own people hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're keeping most of, like, not most, they're doing a lot of like their fundraising vendors. The company that handles their fundraising is actually owned by one of the members of Turning Point USA, and so a lot of this money is just keep on trickling down in house. They spent at least $500,000 on a bot farm, or not a bot farm, on a troll farm. It's just fascinating how these
How very
nonprofits.
David Brock of you, Charlie Kirk.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what does that translate into in rubles?
Yeah, right. And that's the thing too, is that, well, look, Turning Point USA, held a gala. That's what they called it. They held a gala December 18th of 2019. On the tax documents, they reported raising $10.5 million in one night. And the people that were attending that gala that were speakers were obviously Charlie Kirk, but Donald Trump Jr., Kimberly Guilfoyle, Mark Levin, Jerry Falwell Jr. And they had it at Mar-a-Lago. Charlie Kirk definitely, whether, you can say this legal, fine, but definitely awesome. He was definitely exploiting his connections, and raising a shit ton of money, off of his proximity to Trump and company. Because I mean, hell, you're holding your fundraisers at Mar-a-Lago. You've got the president's son. That's that's bringing out the big donors.
But they all
right?
do this. I mean, that's how it
Absolutely.
always works. Whoever you have a proximity to, you got to leech onto them and suck as much away from them as you can. That whole circle in Washington, all of them, both sides of the aisle, they are all. I mean, we just saw again a picture of Joe Biden's granddaughter and Donald Trump's daughter hanging out together in the Hamptons or something. I mean, they all hang out. They go to the same dinner parties. They vacation together. They shop together. It's they put on a show for you, but they're all kind of
compare their father's war crimes.
Right. But yeah, so
Oh.
that's what's coming up in this week's PolitiFi. And I got a couple of my followers got mad at me because I posted some stuff about Turning Point and Charlie Kirk, and I don't give a fuck, because I mean, quite honestly, it's like, last week I did Sunrise, this week I did Turning Point. I mean, I don't know who it'll be next week. It might not be nothing huge that comes out next week. I don't know. But, I'm
Right.
always looking for stuff. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that I'm just following the money until I get there. I don't care if you're on the
And you're
left or you're on the
consistent.
right.
You criticize, but like it's not a partisan thing. It's not
'Cause
you
I don't,
just
yeah. I mean, because I don't really care. I mean, I care, but it's also like, I also know, like, I know that these politicians are greedy fucks and nothing's really gonna change. I mean, money is always, I mean, again, in last week's issue, I wrote about how like several of the largest defense contractors are already using their PACs to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars to candidates on both sides of the aisle, not just in it, the 5-6 figure donations to the institutions themselves, such as DNC, DCCC. They're all taking $100,000 from Boeing
PAC.
taking 15 grand from Lockheed Martin. They're all the same. It's really hard to sit here and sell the idea that party one will save you from party two, when both parties are being paid by the same people behind the scenes. That's the one thing. Like, I already, obviously, I've always been a cynic. I've never been trustworthy of any kind of politicians. I grew up I was a teenager during the 9/11 years.
right.
That kind of ruined politics for me. Like, there was no I'm going to take you at your word after that. But going forward, and I start doing the work I'm doing now, and I start really looking at the money and who's paying who, and you really realize that you're right. There is no voting your way out of this, because no matter who you vote for, it's going to wind up being paid for by the same person. I mean, hell, after the tens of millions of dollars that Citadel hedge fund billionaire Kenneth Griffin spent funding Republican super PACs during the 2020 cycle, which he did, when it all came down to it, and Joe Biden won and started raising funds for his inauguration, that same Kenneth Griffin, who spent tens of millions trying to keep Biden out of office, chipped in $500,000 of his own, to the inauguration, just to be a nice guy.
Yeah, well, they cover their ass. Like, that's why you'll see that a lot of these people donate to both Democrats and Republicans, because then they've hedged their bets, and whoever gets into office, they can work with them, and that person now owes you something, and that party now owes you something, and that's how this all works. That's why money in politics is so fucking toxic. It's so obvious. It's just it's really bizarre to me that people that this is the system that we allow ourselves to function in, because it's so completely corrupt. I mean. But you're right. It is, and there's some distinct cliques. I think, like, there are certain candidates who take more from big oil and maybe not as much from pharma, and there's some candidates who take more from pharma, maybe not as much as big oil. But it's basically the same crew. They're all owned and operated by the same people. They all serve the same agenda, and it doesn't really matter who you are or what you do. You're going to fall in line, for the donors, because that's essentially who is protecting your job and paying your paycheck and getting you all the kickbacks and the book deals and the lobbyist positions once you do leave office and all of that stuff. And it's just completely corrupt to the core.
Yeah.
And if you want to see
Wall
the
Street.
epitome of that, I was just going to say, if you want to see the epitome of that, look at Senator Robert Menendez from the state I live in, New Jersey. The guy is the epitome of sleaze, of beltway sleaze, of political sleaze. He is just a horrible human being. There are allegations.
Throw a dart at politicians, and it doesn't matter who you hit.
there are allegations of sexual assault of a minor, or that he traveled out of the country to have sex with minors. That right there is, I think, just the epitome, the embodiment of what we've been talking about as far as political corruption and what money can do to keep somebody like that in power. He's been in that seat for a long ass time, and he's a Zionist. He's an ardent supporter of Israel. I could go on and on.
Term limits. But look, I so I mean about the Substack. I started PolitiFi because there's a lot of stuff that I was researching, a lot of stuff that I see that may not exactly be groundbreaking stories and stuff, but still may be relevant. And even if they're not relevant now, may be relevant months from now when something happens, you're like, oh, well, now there's a connection to be made, which it often happens. But I also saw that felt like there was a void in the space of, extremely niched campaign finance journalism in the independent media space. And I wrestled with the idea of monetizing the newsletter or just any of my content in general, because, I obviously want to make this a career, and it's hard to do that without monetizing. But there's also the fact that, we are in the middle of a pandemic. People don't really have the money to be paying some guy on Twitter. And I completely understand that. So the way I want to do it is that, obviously, unlike some of the other independent so-called outlets like TYT and The Intercept, I actually am that. We actually are that. I don't take money from anybody. No nonprofits, no billionaires, no corporations, no nothing. The only people that will be funding my work will be the people that subscribe to the Substack and fund my work. And I do that because I feel like it's important, and I feel like that's that model, not just me, obviously, that does that, but that model is extremely important. It's how we have to grow these models so we can try to take back the information cycle from the corporate media that do nothing but lie to you. I wanted a place to where I could compile the biggest campaign finance and follow the money stories from both campaign finance journalism, like from actual elections, to the nonprofit industry, to covering super PACs. I want to give weekly updates on where your senators and congressmen and women are investing their monig into public space, such as stocks or stuff like that. I want to, give the biggest updates on lobbying, big country, or not countries, but, the large companies, maybe even the smaller companies that maybe have financial ties of their own to politicians. Like, as I've reported in the past, there's AI companies that have ties to Michelle Flournoy, who used to work with Tony Blinken right before he got confirmed. And now they're lobbying the government for government contracts, which, again, that type of story doesn't require 800 words. But I feel like that information is relevant. So I wanted to find a space, or create a space for, the bigger stories, but also smaller little bits of information like that. And then also keeping, like I said, a week-to-week update of, new investments made by,
I love
people
that.
in executive branch and, beyond, but also keeping key updates on, lobbying hires and why they matter. Like, why does it matter that this lobbyist was hired by this company?
And,
Exactly, that kind of stuff. I feel like it's swept under the rug a lot. And I just wanted to create a space for that, which I just feel like, has been lacking when, the independent media sphere that we all work in. And it's a hot mess right now. But it's a crucial, but we're in a crucial time, though, guys, because I know electoral politics is pretty much worthless as far as like actually achieving the goals that you set out to achieve with it, but it is also all consuming, and the midterms are, like it or not, they're going to be here very soon. We're already through the first semester of 2019, which means we've only got 3 more of those to go until election day. And we're heading towards the and I know that this always happens, but we're heading towards, yet again, the most expensive midterms in history. And yeah, it's look, I mean, I just think it's important that people know who's paying for their politicians. I think it's important that people know who's paying for the narrative that you see, the billions of dollars that are spent by super PACs on those commercials that we all hate so much. There's a
Mm-hmm.
reason why they spend that money. It's because they can show you that they know that you're going to have to watch this ad 100 times a day,
Well,
and
and it
even if
also gives
it's
them
total
control over
bullshit.
that also gives them the control over the network. If you're buying ads all the time, that's revenue for the network. And now that network will do whatever you want, will cover whatever you want, will tell the story however you want.
Well, it's
And that's
also
very
like
beneficial.
the old tried and true strategy of just repeating something a
Mm-hmm.
million times until
Until
even
it's
if the
true.
person either until it's true or the person believes it or the person, whether they believe it or not, they still can't. It's like that song you hate that
Mm-hmm.
you can't get out of your head and you just start humming it anyway. That's the same idea. That's exactly what super PACs do. That's why they do it, because it works.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ways that billionaires control the narrative and everything around it. Because and I don't know, camping. It's always fascinated me. I know it can be a little bit of a niche thing for people to sit here and read through all of these numbers and stuff like that.
Well, the
But
numbers are huge.
if you want to
Yeah.
know who's paying for your government and who's profiting from your
Robbie's got
government,
receipts, fam.
yeah, and
Robbie
that's
has
another
got
thing too, is that
receipts.
I just want to make sure that receipt can we bring back document-based journalism? I mean, I know that WikiLeaks is kind of inactive right now, but like for God's sakes, I mean, that was the way to do it, and that's the way that it should be done.
Yeah.
Just release the documents. If you make a claim, have a document to back it up. And so very, very few institutions are doing that now. Especially in the post-Trump landscape. I mean, it was all anonymous this, anonymous that. Why can't you just post your proof? So I mean, that's another thing that I've always really just found important is that
It's amazing how much they get away with anonymous sources said,
I mean,
like,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the proof right now. Why can't I show you? I mean, it takes 2 seconds. So I mean,
right.
that's just another thing. So
Anonymous
I don't know.
sources says some spook told me to put this in my article.
Yeah, I read a CNN article recently, and it was I don't know how many hundreds of words. It was far too long for what it was reporting on, but not one source was named. Every source was anonymous and referred to in some phrasing of anonymity.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
yeah, that's
annoying.
Unnamed
access.
officials. My favorite is officials close to the issue say, or experts
Yes.
close to the issue tell
Yeah.
us.
Because
Yeah.
that's
It's
like all
interesting.
encompassing. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, for those interested, to hop on and support the Substack, it's $5 a month for the newsletter. There will be incremental or other articles and stuff that I write that may not necessarily fit into the PolitiFi newsletter, like any updates on Colonial Pipeline or just like major scoops and stuff. I'm not going to monetize those. Those will still be free and still on the Substack, yet separate from the newsletter. But the newsletter itself, where you can get all that information that we were just talking about, $5 a month. Jaeger.substack.com. My last name, JAEGER.substack.com. That's where you sign up. And look, I'm starting with a newsletter. It's just me. I don't have a super expensive staff. I don't have I'm not gonna start an entire outlet in the middle of a pandemic and then expect everybody else to pay for all my new employees. I just feel like there's a couple of places that have done that recently, and it just always leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So I don't want to do that. It's just me. I'm a one-man show. I'm just trying to start this newsletter and see where it goes. I want to elevate both our network because we all work so hard, and I think we deserve to be taken seriously on our reporting. And that's another reason why I wanted to do this is because we break a lot of news, and I want us to be recognized for that. So I want to take it more seriously. I've decided that I need to take it more seriously, even more serious than I already did, and just buckle down and really get to work. So that's what I'm doing because it's going to be easy for us to take us collectively in the indie media space to take a deep breath because the election is over and going to go on vacation and we're just going to argue about which podcaster is worse for the next 6 months. And as fun as that is, it doesn't achieve jack shit almost
No.
really. And and I'm not trying to sound like above it all, because I mean, hell, I might not be achieving that much also either. But the fact of the matter is that I'm trying to stay focused
Mhm.
on keep
I
your
will
eyes on the
say I
prize.
generally try to avoid most of that like high school kind of drama. Every once in a while I'll get dragged in, but I try to avoid it. But
Absolutely.
watching
Yeah.
TYT get exposed has been really delicious for me because they've been shit for a long time, and watching them finally get exposed for like the complete scumbaggery that they are has been really nice. So kudos to Jimmy Dore for doing that. He's been really good at unmasking people over the last year or whatever, year and a half. I don't know, the pandemic really lit something under him, and he's like just throwing it all out there. So
Well, here's the thing with Jimmy is that, well, I mean, the TYT thing has been especially kind of funny to me, because it's just like vindication of everything I reported on back in 2019. And then nobody was like, oh, well, show me where they've changed, blah blah blah. I was like, I mean, if you can't see it, then it's working.
I can't help you. Yeah.
Especially with regard to Syria and their just refusal to believe that there was an OPCW cover up and that there was actually not a chemical weapons attack.
Despite being like force fed.
It's like they kept saying it over and over, and they got to the breaking point where they were like, why isn't anybody listening to me? And then they had,
well, here's the thing. It's
they were taking it all out on Aaron Mate.
Yeah, the nicest guy in media.
The old trick about kind of moving somebody's desk like a quarter inch a day every day until like at the end of the year it's on the other side of the room and they still haven't noticed it, right? I mean, that's what TYT has essentially done to their viewers. That couldn't see it. Like, you might not have been able to see it back in 2019 or 2018, but now you flash forward to 2021 and now you really realize where their desk used to be as opposed to where it is now, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, okay, definitely. They've definitely shifted. And Jimmy, man, Jimmy just brings out people hate him so much that they go and make a whole ass out of themselves and tell all on themselves when they flip out about him.
Yeah.
And he just is kind of just sitting there like, I mean, you just exposed yourself. Jimmy Dore has exposed most people by proxy,
just because it's so easy for him.
His show literally triggers the fuck out of like very large amounts of very people that consider themselves to be very serious people are being really butthurt over the musings of
because he's a
Jimmy Dore
who's getting high in his garage and he's doing better journalism than them. I'd be pissed off too. I'd be ashamed. You should be ashamed. You should feel bad about that. But the only way to combat that is to do better work and not shit all over Jimmy Dore personally. Like, coming out with personal attacks like that is so telling. It really is just so telling.
They just hate him because he's making more money than them. And I know that that's look, I could be wrong. I'm just speculating. Okay, I'm just speculating. I can't say that for sure. He's definitely getting more attention than them. He's definitely getting more impressions than them, right? And they can't stand that. And
the live stream numbers are crazy. Jimmy Dore's getting 12,000, 15,000 people watching a live stream, and TYT is getting like 255.
And these are post-election numbers. Yeah. 15,000 live, and those are down from whenever he was during the election season. He was pulling, but still 15,000 viewers. People, some of the biggest channels on YouTube would kill for 15,000 viewers on a live stream.
TYT used to get it, and now they're getting a couple of hundred.
And so the thing is, and then of course you got The Intercept. Ryan Grimm can't stand Jimmy Dore, and he's constantly sending out emails talking about how new membership is down 30% at The Intercept after Trump has left office, and how they're trying to raise $400,000 during the month of June, and that they still need $170,000.
Hey Ryan, have you tried not being a CIA cutout?
And it's like, hey Ryan, you make like $350,000 a year. Take a pay cut.
And you barely have to write anything.
I mean, you could take a pay cut right now, cut your salary in half for the whole year, and you could raise that $170,000 right today. But see, that's the thing. Like, again, like TYT claiming to be independent, but they're not. The Intercept doesn't want to tell you why they need your money. Like, whenever you donate to,
so they can give it to Bellingcat.
Oh boy. Yeah, oh boy. See, that's another thing too, is that Bellingcat, nobody's really, I mean, I know Mate and the boys over at Gray Zone have done their best to, dig into what you can dig about Bellingcat, but the Bellingcat is, I'd say they're dangerous.
Yeah,
It's hugely dangerous.
100%.
It's like what some people can find a way to weaponize anything, right? I feel like, and as you know, we look at independent journalism like that. Bellingcat is what happens when you weaponize independent journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're open source, right? And you can't really. Uh, it's a very opaque situation over there.
Yeah,
They
but
don't, and so
what they do is basically, it's not really intelligence. They go online and they find information and then they aggregate that and create some kind of thesis out of that. And their big claim to fame is that they, I believe, figured out that it was, or they claim that it was a Russian missile that brought down the Malaysia airplane over Ukraine,
right.
back in 2014. So that was their claim to fame, that they were the ones who homed in on that. And they were founded by a former video game designer, something like that. It's
shady as
Look,
fuck.
it's shady.
Yeah.
It is shady as shit. But just watching these independent outlets, like again, independent outlets, TYT, Intercept, Bellingcat. Even though Bellingcat kind of has its own little weird thing. It just it makes me thankful that I'm actually part of a true independent outlet that doesn't have any of these kind of things. Like, we get shit thrown at us all the time, mostly by people who are just not contributing anything to the discourse whatsoever. And really, the only thing that most of them are good at are kissing politicians' asses. We get a lot of hate because we don't do that. I won't do that, anyway.
Mm-mm.
But so, look, independent media is more important now than ever because corporate media is going to lull us all to sleep for the next 3.5 years. But the entire time, they are going to be profiting off your government. They're going to be abusing the power that they have. So, this reporting is important. What we do is important, and I'm hoping that PolitiFi kind of takes off, and let's just see where it goes. And I mean, I'm not leaving MCSC. Obviously, I'm trying to grow it.
Right.
So
No, and it's
that's
cool to
where I'm
see you
at now.
doing this. I'm glad that you're doing it. I hope everybody goes and subscribes. We will, if you ever want to come on and hype it up some more or cover one of the weekly releases, we'd love to have you back on to do it. So everybody go check out Substack. It's jaeger.substack.com. You can also find a link on his Twitter page. It's in his bio or whatever. So definitely go and check that out. Thanks for coming on to talk about it and giving us an update on Colonial. It'll be interesting to see how that all pans out too. So I'm sure we'll be talking again about Colonial. Good old Colonial Pipeline.
Oh boy.
Aren't they great? Okay. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you go subscribe and we will catch you next time.